Zombieville USA 3D shocked me, and not in the way that I expected. What started as a quick playtest, you know, the old I'll have a quick look and see if it's worth a review routine, very quickly spiralled into a 10-hour brain-melting addiction that left me needing a shower and questioning my life choices. Now don't get me wrong, this ain't gaming perfection, it's a scrappy little indie brawler with a few niggling issues, but for the price of a London pint and the sheer charm it oozes, you'd be hard pressed to find a more bang for your buck release this year. And yes, if you're one of the lucky sods who owns a handheld like a Steam Deck, you're in for a proper treat. But what really grabbed me though, apart from the undead hordes trying to tear me a new one, is how Zombieville USA 3D channels that old school gaming magic. No fluff, no predatory microtransactions, just pure brain splattering fun like we used to get in the good old days. So put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's go full zombie mode in today's review. Zombieville USA 3D is a proper mouthful, even for Sasha Grey on a double shift. So, for the sake of my tongue and yours, we're just going to call it Zombieville. The premise is dead simple. You stroll through a quaint American suburb, gun in hand, turning the undead into chunky salsa. Zombies rise up out the dirt, you blast them to bits, they drop cash because apparently capitalism doesn't die, and you eventually die a horrific death, and then you spend your blood money on perks, bigger guns, and a desperate attempt to survive longer on the next time out. And this is where the nostalgia kicks in. There's something so beautifully old school about Zombieville. It's like having an arcade game in your gaff, but without the sticky carpets, dodgy joystick, or some sweaty teenager. And whilst I might have just described the gameplay like I'm reading off a napkin, don't be fooled. There's actually a surprising amount of depth here, and this is where Zombieville really comes alive, because the guns all feel unique and force you to actually think about what you're doing. It's not just about picking the biggest, loudest boomstick and hoping for the best. See, you can only carry 4 items at a time, which means you've got to be smarter than your average undead twat when looting the random weapon chests scattered about town. Do you stick with a pistol, loads of bullets, but about as effective as a pensioner swinging a handbag? Or do you grab a shotgun, turning zombies into meat kebabs but suffering from the reload speed of a hungover slug? Or do you pick an assault rifle which sits somewhere in between, a jack of all trades, master of none, much like your average Call of Duty player? Ho calm down. And the best part, you'll be switching up weapons on the fly with a simple button press, because every few seconds throws you into a new panic, and suddenly that pea shooter you were laughing at becomes your best mate as you scramble to the next chest. The reason you're constantly switching up your strategy comes down to 2 key things. First off, kill enough zombies and the next wave kicks off, bringing more of the undead bastards and making them just a little bit harder to put down. But don't worry, it's not all bad news, because as they get harder they drop more cash, which means more lovely upgrades to keep you in the fight longer. And the real kicker is the variety of zombies that you have to deal with. You've got your bog standard brain dead cannon fodder stumbling around like they've just been kicked out of a Weatherspoons, and then you've got the quick bony bastards. They dash at you and will ruin your day if you're not ready. Next up, we've got the big tanky little slow but soaking up your precious bullets. Then there's the fat my 600 pound life-esque weak ones who explode on impact, causing absolute devastation like a little landmine made of lard. And finally, we've got the old age pensioner zombies, frail, weak, but spitting acid at you from a distance, which is literally what my nan used to do when she had too much sherry. And as the waves keep coming, the enemy mix gets more brutal. You'll be swapping to shotguns for the tanks, assault rifles for the sprinting nutters, and pistols to pop a few pensioners from a safe distance. But after 10 hours of glorious zombie murder, I can confidently say the sniper rifle is the king of guns. At first I wrote it off, it felt too slow, too clunky, but then I discovered its true power. Kite the enemies, back off a bit, and suddenly you're dropping 5 or 6 of the blighters with a single bullet as it tears through every little rotten skull in its path. It's lovely stuff, it is. And when you inevitably snuff it, and trust me, you will snuff it, you're booted back to your little hub where you can lick your wounds, cry into your cuppa, and spend your hard-earned zombie cash on upgrades. This is where the real addiction kicks in, as you fully embrace your Second Amendment rights and kick yourself out like you're prepping for World War III, and when it comes to guns, there's a proper arsenal to choose from, different variations of the same boomsticks, each with their own quirks. Now, I ain't 100% sure yet, but I managed to upgrade my shotgun to around level 7, and if I were a betting man, I'd say it probably goes up to level 10, where I assume it just deletes zombies from existence. You also get to set up a weapon loadout before heading back in, so at least you're not starting off armed with a wet fart and a dream. Weapons are a premium in this game, so starting out strong is key. It's worth noting also that you get to unlock special weapons as you meet certain criteria too, so there is always a reason to stick with your favourite. And then we've got the perks where you can upgrade all the usual RBG gubbins like health, stamina regen, or making your weapons stronger. This is where I went full send it mode, doubling down on shotgun perks and upgrading my boomsticks to god tier levels. The end result, a walking powerhouse that reduced the rare curse zombies to mulch, and since they tend to drop high level weapons, it just snowballed into absolute carnage, and I bloody loved it. But not everything's sunshine and zombie guts in the world of Zombieville, because as much as I love this little game, it's got room for improvement. First up, the map. You get one measly map to prance about in, and for a game like this, that just ain't enough. Ideally, we'd be looking at 4 or 5 different locations, because after a few hours, you'll know this place better than your own home. The layout's decent enough and there's a nice claustrophobic design to it, but you'll start noticing the cracks, the same crashed cars, the same trees, the same parks littered about like a lazy town planner just copy pasted the assets and knocked off early for the day. And as you head to the outer edges, it feels like the dev, he ran out a little bit of ideas, because the map, it just sort of throws up a cemetery or a tree line to stop you from wandering off. And then there's the zombies. We need more variation, to be exact, even if it's just cosmetic. I mean, they've built this wonderfully chaotic little world, so why not lean into it? You've got shopping carts scattered about, so why not have zombie cart dashers? What about zombies that lob random crap at you from off the floor, or ones that climb trees and drop down on you like a zombie Tarzan? Instead, we've got the same 5 or so undead, and dare I say it, they do get a bit boring. And speaking of boring, once you power up your perks and weapons and start out afresh in a new little run, the first 5 or 6 waves are so insultingly easy. It's like you're punching paper bags in a light breeze. You'll just be stood around twiddling your thumbs, waiting for zombies to slowly wander in so that you can put them out their misery and get to the good stuff. And finally, it's those cheap little deaths. I've talked about kiting tactics and weapon swapping, but sometimes it all goes right out the bloody window, because a zombie spawns directly under your feet, gnaws on your ankles, and before you know it, you're brown bread. It doesn't feel like skill or strategy, it just feels like the game flipping you the bird. If the dev beefed up the enemy variety and added some fresh maps, Zombieville would go from a fun little time waster to a proper banger. Graphically, Zombieville is a right little charmer though, packed with a wonderful art style that's got just the right amount of cartoon carnage. But what really stands out are the top tier animations. The way zombies snuff it is gloriously detailed, with each weapon ripping them apart in its own unique way. Shotgun to the face, skull goes pop as blood splatters all over the joint. Cryo Jun, watch him shatter like a pensioner on an icy pavement. Even the tiny little details impress me, like how your character's hat bounces gently with every step like a proper little jaunting geezer that he is. The environments are packed with detail too, almost like a little miniature diorama full of little nooks and crannies that make it feel alive despite all the death. Now, like I mentioned up front, this thing absolutely shines on a handheld. I put in countless hours on my ROG Ally, running at 900p on medium settings, and it held a rock solid 60 to 80 FPS. I'd bet my left bollock that the Steam Deck runs it just as smoothly. If you're gaming on the go, this one's a proper treat. Zombie slaying at your fingertips no matter where you are. And for those wondering, yeah, it runs at 4K max settings flawlessly, but honestly, aside from a bit of extra mist in the air and some slightly shinier puddles, it looks and feels exactly the same as it does on handheld. So you're not missing out on much if you're playing on a smaller screen. And one thing to add here actually, and it's one minor gripe that I add, is around ray tracing, and it does seem to mess it all up, as it induces some sort of epileptic fit with the street lamps where they continually flash on and off. So it's best to leave that setting for now anyway. As for the colour palette, bang on, vibrant, saturated just enough to give it that animated horror charm rather than the usual brown and grey misery that zombie games love to slap on you. Honestly, there's not much to hate here other than, as mentioned earlier, the repeating assets and the need for more maps and enemy variety. But as far as presentation goes, Zombieville knocks it right out the graveyard. Sound-wise, Zombieville is just as solid as its visuals, maybe even better. First off, the music, a bouncy little number straight out of a 1930s jazz bar, like something you'd hear while sipping whiskey in a smoky room, waiting for the cops to bust in. And somehow, despite hearing the same tune over and over again, it never once got on my tits, which is a rare thing in gaming, especially when you're stuck in a loop of murder and mayhem. But the real showstopper is the sound effects. Everything sounds thick, meaty, and ridiculously satisfying, like a proper slap to the chops. The shotgun in particular is an absolute beauty, delivering that deep, throaty boom, and yes, that's what she said, leaving a reverberation in the air that just feels right. The zombie splatters, beautifully gory, the sound of bones slicing into as they take a sword, chef's kiss, everything just clicks into place perfectly, making each shot, splatter and exploding skull feel like a little symphony of carnage. Brilliant stuff. So Zombieville gets a big fat Cockney gamer nod, but I can already hear it in the comments. But Reggie, ain't this just a glorified mobile game? You know what? Yeah, it probably is, but it's also a slicker, smoother and cleaner version of those same pocket-sized zombie shooters, only this time it ain't riddled with microtransaction filth trying to shake you down like a dodgy car salesman. And let's be honest, it's $10 bloody. That's less than you've probably spunked on a useless skin in some live service disaster. There's no microtransactions here, a solid progression system, and above all else, it's just pure mindless zombie splattering fun. For me, this is the definition of no risk, big reward buy. It's the kind of game that gives far more enjoyment than it ever takes. Now, is it the perfect indie title? No, it needs more variety, more maps and a few extra bells and whistles, but what it does do well, it does bloody brilliantly. And in the end, Zombieville does exactly what the name suggests. It lets you zone out like a zombie, sink into your sofa and just get lost for hours in mindless, glorious carnage. Until next time, my lovelies, Reggie out.